Is there a Mehdi thing we're going to watch? Yes. Mehdi had a conversation with my Professor Jiang.
Called you China's Nostradamus. You had three famous predictions in 2024 that Trump would get elected, that he would start a war with Iran, and that he would lose a war with Iran.
Iran clearly has the strategic advantage. I think the next step in the escalation ladder is that Trump will send in ground forces.
Nikki Haley was key to your prediction about Iran. You said Trump would pick her as his running mate, but he didn't pick her.
I think that the problem with education is that it focuses too much on facts, too much on rigor, and not enough on imagination.
Too much on facts. Do you hear yourself? Does China control what you say now? Your critics might say they're using you as a propagandist.
It is possible I'm a useful idiot. And I suspect that there are many entities around the world who would like to amplify my message, including the Chinese government.
Hold on. You don't call yourself Professor Jiang on your YouTube channel?
I do now, but when I first started out, if you go way back to my early lectures...
It doesn't matter when you first started out. You do call yourself Professor Jiang and you're not a professor. What is your big prediction now for 2026? We'll see what happens. We can test it out at the end of the year. Back in 2024, Chinese-Canadian educator Shui-Qin Jiang posted a video on his YouTube channel, Predictive History, where he laid out three big predictions. Donald Trump would win the 2024 election, the US would then go to war with Iran, and ultimately the US would lose that war. Since then, the self-styled professor who says he uses game theory to analyze the past and predict future geopolitical events has become an internet sensation, and has even been dubbed China's Nostradamus. But he's also faced some criticisms over his predictions and, many would say, pretty out there conspiracy theories. 2 out of 3 of Jiang's big predictions have come true. But how much of that is his own geopolitical foresight, and how much of it simply comes down to luck? How much does the Chinese government control or even influence what he says, what he predicts? I decided to not just speak to Shui-Qin Jiang, aka Professor Jiang, about Iran and the state of the world.
I don't like the way he hit that. That's Mr. Professor Predictive History to you, Mehdi. Unbelievable. He hit the air quotes. He's the professor in my heart.
But also to challenge him a bit. Here's our interview. Shui-Qin Jiang, thank you so much for joining me on Zeteo. You have said you use game theory to predict future geopolitical events. For those who have never heard of game theory, please do explain what it is and how it helps you explain what's happening with Donald Trump and with Iran in particular.
Right. So game theory applied to geopolitics means that we see each individual nation state as a player in a zero-sum game to maximize its individual interests. And so each player would have its own characteristics, its own strengths, and it would adopt a optimal strategy in order to win the zero-sum game.
So how does that apply in the Middle East right now?
Right. So the United States is attacking Iran. And these two nation states have different strengths and weaknesses. So America has the world's greatest military. It has aerial supremacy. It has tremendous technology. It has unlimited funding. And so Iran is adopting an asymmetrical strategy of holding the global economy hostage, meaning that rather than attacking the United States directly, which it cannot defeat directly, it is instead controlling the Strait of Hormuz, which is strangling the global economy. And it's attacking the GCC nations, the infrastructure of the GCC nations, in order to force Trump into the negotiating table. So
the CPC literally deported Jiang for spying in 2001, 2002. I don't get where Mehdi's Chinese government control angle is coming from other than racism and Orientalism. Yeah, I don't know.
So that is the asymmetrical warfare of Iran.
You've also predicted that the US, you had 3 famous predictions in 2024 that Trump would get elected, that he would start a war with Iran, and that he would lose a war with Iran. Based on what you've seen over the past month, do you still stand by that prediction?
Yes, I do. I think that after a month, I think that Iran clearly has the strategic advantage. And what I mean by that is that Iran is very clearly able to articulate its military objectives, and it has a very clear strategy of how to obtain these military objectives. And it is working very hard and very meticulously to obtain these objectives. This is the complete opposite of America, where Trump has failed to articulate an end goal. And right now, it seems that the administration, the Trump administration, is unable to articulate both a strategy and a purpose to the American public, which is causing most Americans to not support this war. It's also causing low soldier morale among the American forces.
What do you think happens next if/when Iran wins?
Mehdi doesn't really have a sincere inquisitive mode, and perhaps this guy doesn't deserve that, but he has obliterate mode and my perceived ally mode only. That's actually a really good assessment. And when he goes into obliterate mode, I mean, he is one of the best in the game for sure. He is so good at it. And I will say, I think Professor Jiang does deserve it. But yeah, you're right. There are a lot of instances, like there's certain positions that Mehdi has as an anti-communist, right? Like he is just straight up an anti-communist. I don't know if he's like an anti-socialist as well, because he does align a lot, but he is definitely anti-communist. So like whenever American foreign adversaries are brought up, he does the thing that like I like to call like the blanket like neutral moral values without factoring in to his consideration imperialism and its impact, right? Like Western-born instability and what countries might do in response towards that kind of Western-backed and Western-born instability, right? Who cares about that? He's solid on every subject. I mean, I like Mehdi Hassan. What are you talking about? I love Mehdi. I hung out with him. I talked to him quite frequently. I'm just giving you an honest assessment. He is perhaps the best debater, and he's not like a debate pervert about it either. Zeteo is a fantastic operation. I was just telling you that like something that I've noticed with the way that he operates, like when it comes to all of the like state actors that are outside of the American security umbrella, he has almost the same smoke that he has for like America and Israel. And I feel like sometimes it's like not as warranted, if that makes sense. Like Cuba is a great example of this, which is like a country that we've like actively destroyed, right? No matter what kind of like repression exists in Cuba, which is marginal in comparison to like many other countries, including but not limited to the United States of America, applying to Cuba the same standards that you would apply to like the United States of America, or even China, because like China is a little bit more appropriate because it's a totally sovereign nation state that is a behemoth of a country now, you know, and can stand on its own 2 feet, regardless of like how aggressively America might want to destabilize it. Like doing that same like, well, what do you say about like, you know, your critics that say you're engaging in tremendous repression? It's like, well, they've been in war, right? They've been in war for the last 60 years. They didn't invite this war. It was totally unjustifiable. And yes, of course, like certain civil liberties are going to be taken away.
Right. So even though Iran has the advantage right now, we still have to remember that America is the world's greatest empire. It has a lot of resources.
Professor Jiang knows every question Mehdi will ask before the interview. True. He predicted it, except I don't think he really did. Because if he had predicted what this interview was going to look like, he probably wouldn't have done it. Because I could have told Professor Jiang not to do this interview at all. Okay.
It has a lot of firepower still not used. So I think the next step in the escalation ladder is that Trump will send in ground forces. So over 5,000 Marines and soldiers have been dispatched to the Middle East. This is already on top of the 50,000 American soldiers already stationed in the Middle East. And most military analysts expect that the Americans will launch an amphibious assault in order to control the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there are several options available to the Americans in order to control the Strait of Hormuz. The first option is to control Karg Island, which is the oil depot of the Iranians. 90% of Iranians' oil exports depart from Karg Island. Then you have Qasim Island, which is just opposite the Strait of Hormuz. And then there's a naval base further down the coastline. And so these are the three options that the Americans have. And it is unclear which option the Americans will ultimately choose. But given the track record of the Marines, we can
Dude, Professor Jiang has a cult, I swear to God. You can literally pick apart every single thing that he has said, and people will be like, I just remember his high notes, and I don't give a fuck. Okay? Like, you scratch the surface of his analysis. I'm entertained endlessly by Professor Jiang. Okay? I love how much he predicts history. Okay? I'm a fan. But it's unbelievable how much people hang on every word and they get mad at me when I'm like, dude, some of this stuff is insane. Some of this stuff is unbelievable. And people will just be like, what are you saying? He predicted that Trump would lose. It's like, okay, man, so did I. What does that say? It doesn't mean anything. Like, so did many other people. Okay.
Expect the Marines to have an early success. The problem with the strategy and the problem with America's overall strategy is what happens next? How do you maintain control over the territory that you've claimed? The reality is that the Iranians have been preparing this battle for about 20 years. They developed this very effective asymmetrical warfare strategy of using drones and ballistic missiles from afar, hidden in underground bases, to hit and strike American assets around the Middle East. This is almost like guerrilla warfare. And historically,
I can't take him seriously without a whiteboard that he constantly turns around and says, okay, and then writes what word he was just saying previously. Like, I need that. You know what I mean? He loses a big part of his impact when he is not sitting in front of a whiteboard.
Power has had great difficulties in containing guerrilla warfare. Yeah. So unfortunately, the Americans don't have a long-term strategy of how to win this war. Trump is still hoping for a quick strike, a knockout punch, and he believes that the American Marines can deliver this knockout punch.
I predict politics, he'd go to war with Iran, but that wasn't based on geopolitical insights or game theory. People who follow American politics or world politics could have guessed that. I think I and many others were warning that Trump could win in 2024 and that he would escalate with Iran, as he did in his first term when he killed Qasem Soleimani.
Right. So I think that if you've been following the news very closely, then it was actually pretty straightforward to make these three predictions, right? Because in Trump's first term, as you mentioned, Trump did have a history of escalating conflict with Iran. So the biggest escalation was when Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. And quite frankly, America and Iran should have gone to war during that time. But because of the escalation efforts on both sides, we prevented World War III during that time. But Trump was under tremendous pressure from his allies and from his donors to start a conflict in the Middle East. So if Trump had won a second term, then he would have started the conflict. I was pretty confident that he would start the conflict if he had won in 2020. But fortunately, he lost. And so that question then was, what is the likelihood that he would get a second term? Would he win in 2024? And then as I watched the news, it seemed pretty obvious to me that the Democrats were hopeless, that they were not delivering on the promise.
See, he won me back. He won me back. My goat. He predicted that I would fall for him again, even without the whiteboard.
Promises. That there were a lot of issues. For example, what's happening in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, that was making American voters disillusioned with the Democratic establishment. And so I thought that Trump would have a very good chance of winning 2024. And if he won 2024, I think there's a very strong likelihood that he would attack Iran. And so all three predictions have panned out.
Just on your predictions, I just want to be clear here. Nikki Haley was key to your prediction about Iran. You said Trump would pick her as his running mate, and as vice president, she would pressure Trump into war with Iran. She's a notorious hawk. But he didn't pick her. And his current vice president, J.D. Vance, is widely seen as a skeptic of this war. So you admit you got that wrong?
Yes, absolutely. So I was thinking of what Trump's electoral strategy would be in 2024. And I think that if he picked Nikki Haley, this would be a tremendous boost to his campaign, because Nikki Haley would be very popular among neocons in Washington, D.C. She would also be very popular among suburban white women. That was key to Biden's victory in 2020. So I made the prediction that he would pick Nikki Haley. But at the same time, I was not completely sure about it because I also felt that J.D. Vance also had a good opportunity to be selected. And I also said during my lecture, making the prediction that Nikki Haley would be his running mate, that depending on whether or not he picked Nikki Haley or J.D. Vance, this would determine how we can foresee or understand Trump's second term. And so if he had picked Nikki Haley, then he would have been he would have been fully committed into the neocon project of regime change throughout the Middle East, of supporting Israel, of establishing American imperial power throughout the world. He didn't pick Nikki Haley. Instead, he picked the complete opposite, who is J.D. Vance, who is America first, who has always been skeptical of American imperial over.
This is where he's wrong. I mean, obviously he was like literally wrong in his prediction, but he's also just wrong about J.D. Vance. And the reason why I say that is because he's just totally off base. J.D. Vance is not a real human. Like, he doesn't have true convictions. He's just a chameleon. Like, the reason why we think of J.D. Vance as like someone who's, I guess, anti-interventionist is not because he actually has demonstrated any sort of anti-interventionist values. He's just Peter Thiel's blood boy. Yeah, he is an opportunist for sure. So Professor Jiang had his class read Hillbilly Elegy. Shut the fuck up.
But not only that, he also picked Tulsi Gabbard to be his director of national intelligence. And so these are the two major skeptics of this war in the Middle East. And what I will say about picking these two individuals is that it shows that Trump has an off-ramp strategy, where if this war goes sideways and the American public is up in arms and he's losing in the polls, then Trump may decide to pivot back to America first and have J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard elevated in the administration over individuals such as Marco Rubio and Peter Hegseth.
Yes.
So that, yeah.
I suspect he will blame Pete Hegseth if all of this goes sideways, as it is.
The funny thing about Jiang is that he doesn't even try to defend himself when confronted. When Sneeko asked him how he uses game theory, he literally said, well, I don't really. When Mehdi says he's being used, Jiang will just say, yeah, I could just be an idiot. It's so funny. He's not even committed to the act. He's just vibing it all out. I think Professor Jiang, in a weird way, is taking advantage of like Orientalist attitudes, where they just think he's like a mysterious Chinese professor who is wise well beyond his years. Like, I think Americans they hear the accent, they see the whiteboard, and they're just like, wow, like this guy's a sage. It's funny because like for many Americans who haven't seen the world, I guess, like Professor Jiang's attitude is not unique, to say the least. He's just like a Chinese unk. A lot of Chinese boomers have similar insane opinions, like and have moments of profound clarity paired up with like totally insane opinions. It's like the unks, okay? It's like the unks from Bangladesh, right? Or an Iraqi unk, okay? You talk to an unk from Iraq, he is going to give you the most complex assessment, simplified, like Uber drivers, you know, like people like that. Exactly. They're gonna explain to you everything. You're like, oh my God, you are so brilliant. Like, why are you driving an Uber? You said you were a chemical engineer. Like, how did this happen? Because a lot of Americans don't realize that, like, I would say that like the base level of education elsewhere is just far better than the average American. And by virtue of not being from America, you're just not you're not as sheltered. You have a much better, much deeper understanding of the way world events unfold. It's it's not unique. I mean, I even benefit from that to a certain degree, right? Like my perspective is guided by the fact that I grew up in Turkey, so I have a very different attitude about American imperialism and endless, ceaseless militarism than the average American does, and the average Westerner does. It almost comes across as profound. You're saying he grew up in Canada and he went to Yale. Yes, sure, fine. But like, obviously he spent a good deal of time outside of America as well. So that's what I mean.
Where does China fall into all of this? You're a Chinese Canadian, you're based in Beijing. China clearly stands to gain from a failed US war with Iran. How much of your views are reflective of China's views, the Chinese government's views, the CCP's views?
Right. So the official Chinese Communist Party line is that China is committed to global peace and to...
He said Chinese Communist Party. Red flag. Flag on the play, Professor Jiang. Bruh. That's a bruh moment. Bruh.
Global trade that benefits all. China wants a win-win globalized system in which people are trading peacefully and which everyone is committed to world peace. And so China has come out vocally criticizing both Iran and the United States. The United States for starting this war, but also Iran for attacking the GCC energy infrastructure. Remember that China relies heavily on Qatar liquefied natural gas, as is the case with other countries in Europe. So China looks at what's happening in the Middle East, and China, I think, is working very hard diplomatically to come to an agreement. Unfortunately, right now, China doesn't have much leverage over either the United States or Iran. In fact, many analysts believe that this war was started in part to economically strangle China, because China depends on a lot of its economy. A lot of its economy is based on accessing cheap energy from overseas, specifically the GCC. China imports 40% of its energy needs from the GCC. And so if the GCC were to stop energy production, then the Chinese economy would be in a lot of trouble. And this would give Trump a lot of negotiating leverage over China in the upcoming talks scheduled for mid-May. And I believe that what's going to happen is that because the Chinese are extremely pragmatic, and very business oriented. And I think that Trump and China will sign a landmark deal where China agrees to buy a lot of energy from North America.
You're full of praise for China's role in trying to get peace in the Middle East. Here's what I don't get. You were caught filming protests by Chinese workers, famously in 2002 as a freelance journalist at the time. You were suspected by the Chinese government of spying. You were deported from China. Reporters Without Borders protested your deportation at the time. How did you get back into China? And why is it, some of your critics say, you have so little to say about China's role in all of this geopolitics? Is it because you're not allowed to currently?
Right. So
God damn, dude. Half of the chat is saying Chinese buy it, the other half Falun Gong. Yeah, I think it's a secret third thing where I am going to listen to Professor Jiang in his own words and take it at face value and say it's the spirits talking to him, which is what his assessment is, right? That's what he says is going on.
When I started as a young journalist, I was subcontracted by PBS to do a documentary on China's WTO entry. And
Piker Broadcasting Service? A Chinese unk is speaking. Listen and learn. Exactly. Not everything needs a reaction.
one major issue about China's WTO entry, of course, is worker rights. And at this time in China, there was a major restructuring of the state-owned enterprise system. So I was dispatched to northeastern China to film a worker protest. Unfortunately, the place was swarming with police spies, and I was arrested and interrogated for 2 days. I was held incognito for 48 hours, which is the maximum by Chinese law. And I signed a confession saying that I was a reporter and working in China illegally as a reporter, and the decision was made to deport me without charging me with any crime. And so I was allowed to come back into the country, but I was deported. So that was the story.
If they suspected you being a spy, how did they let you back in? China's not known for being that trusting.
They suspect me of being a spy, but after a 48-hour investigation, after doing a thorough background check on me, they concluded that I was not a spy. And I was a journalist working to film in a worker protest.
But it wasn't just 2000.
I don't understand why you spend time working against this guy. Okay, first of all, calm down, okay? I'm not going after your comfort, Professor. That's number one. Number two, I'm just fascinated with him. He's a crank, and I like cranks. I'm fascinated with cranks. That's it.
In 2017, we checked, you wrote an op-ed for CNN.com, headline, China's media enables tyranny and corruption. In that piece, you praised the US media as the world's free speech defender of last resort.
Oh, yeah, this guy's out of control. Okay, never mind. I went back. I'm flip-flopping on my Professor Chong takes, okay? Nope. Never mind. Never mind. He's out. Red flag. That's another bruh moment.
Bruh. Said in China, power trumps truth. And China's Communist Party, you said, maintained its iron grip on power by controlling what's said in the media and what's taught in the classroom. Do you stand by those views from less than a decade ago?
So in 2017, when I was asked by CNN to write an op-ed, I did stand by those views at that time because, like everyone else, in 2016, when Donald Trump won the election, I thought this would be very bad for American democracy because he was clearly not a believer in free speech.
Yes.
He called the news media fake news. And so I wrote the op-ed for American audience saying, like, the greatest treasure, the greatest wealth of America is the First Amendment, the right to speak whatever you want. And I contrast that with China, where you're not allowed to say whatever you want, where you are very much monitored by the government. Even today, I do not have a Chinese online media presence. I do not say anything online. I do not talk to reporters from China because I'm conscious that whatever I say online could be used against me.
But hold on, they allow you to be on this show. They allow you to be on YouTube. You get past the great firewall that you criticized in that CNN piece. How come?
Look, the reality is that the best way to understand my situation in China is I'm essentially a Martian on Earth talking to Martians back at home in Mars. Like, I am not part of the Chinese system. I'm on YouTube, which is blocked in China.
How do they allow you to be on YouTube? This is what I'm not understanding. If you're blocked in China, why do they allow you to become... You're very prominent now. You're famous in the West. I'm sure the Chinese...
Okay, so this is what I mean. Like, I don't think Mehdi understands. Like, the Chinese government doesn't give a if you're on YouTube. They just don't care. A lot of people think that the Chinese government is, like, far more invested in... like trying to manipulate Americans into loving China or whatever. I think they should do that, for the record. Okay, they should, and they don't. And they don't to a degree that is unironically self-defeating. Like, they have the capacity to export so much culture. They have the manufacturing base for it. They have all of the wealth for it. They have the resources for it. And I'm certain that they have, I mean, they have so many people. There are people who would love to make this happen. And they're just absolutely dog shit at propaganda. So what's funny about Mehdi's question is, he's like, why would China allow you to do this? It's like, well, I was in fucking China. I was able to stream on Twitch. They don't care. Everyone has VPNs. Like they don't necessarily give a shit about people utilizing VPNs. They might crack down on it at certain points. I'm sure they have, right? But it's mostly just like a known thing that the average person, if they want to enter the Western internet, like escape the firewall, the Chinese firewall, they can do so. It's not like a controlled substance at all. China, for all of its, I guess, faults and failures, whatever, genuinely only cares about China and Chinese people, like to a degree that in many instances, like I said, is self-defeating, where they literally do not care about anything else. Like they don't care about like the Labubu stuff, for example. There was a lot of people that wrote about how, Labubus are a way for China to do like soft power. Like they're finally exporting their culture. It's like, no, they were just trade maxing and that happened to hit. Like that's it. Same with like Black Myth Wukong. Now that might change because Xi Jinping did bring up Black Myth Wukong, Labubus, and also the movie Nezha 2, the Chinese blockbuster for children, in his annual State of the Address last year, implying that like they might actually pivot to doing like more exports, more cultural exports. But overall, up until this point, it's just like pure coincidence and pure luck that things have popped off. His like national addressing of the state, like he does it annually. I don't know, what is it called? Like the annual State of the Union? I don't fucking know, something like that. But I think they're just confident about their own culture. It's not that they are oblivious. No, it's not that they're confident about their own culture necessarily. They just don't care about selling shit. They will sell to the Western world what the Western world demands. They don't actually have any like additional ambitions. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because like if you're living in China, they care far more about you being on Chinese platforms and then potentially violating the rules, or potentially criticizing the party. Can't do that. Criticizing Xi Jinping. Can't do that. You can criticize local issues, and people do it all the time, but you can't just like shit on Mao Zedong or any of the leadership. You can't do that. That's like, they will ban you. They will ban you from social media. There's also a lot of weird restrictions around like even Chinese celebrities, right? Like a Chinese celebrity could have a high profile relationship, for example. And then at a time when China wants to, increase the birth rates, right? That Chinese celebrity will fall out of favor after getting into having a breakup or something, right? Like going through a breakup. And when that happens, they just erase you. They just erase your personhood pretty much from social media. It's like, it's crazy. Make no mistake. I find that to be a very strange and very restricted way. They don't like throw you in jail or anything, but they will literally just ban you from social media, and they'll wipe you. Yeah. Not IRL, just on the internet, just on and not even on the internet necessarily, just on Chinese internet. It's like almost like a state enforced cancel culture. And not only is it a state enforced cancel culture, but it's also like it's for unnecessary shit, for like things that you and I would consider to be super silly. Yeah, they'll wipe you for scandals, but sometimes what you consider to be a scandal could be like something that's not actually a scandal, right? That's like some of the restrictions stuff, but it's all entirely internal. It's all in China because that's all they care about. So a guy like Professor Jiang, especially because he's talking about like foreign policy, you can do that you can even do that. What Professor Jiang is doing, he could do on Chinese social media as well, even as long as he's not like super critical of Chinese foreign policy, then he can even do that on Chinese social media. But at the end of the day, they just don't give a shit, They don't care. I will say, however, at least from my conversations that I've had with people that have, lived in China for a very long time, both Westerners and also Chinese netizens, is that at times they're very responsive to American intervention. Whenever America starts saber rattling against China, they clamp down on any kind of dissent. So ironically enough, the way we move here against China ends up having impact on the day-to-day existence of Chinese people. So crackdowns do actually happen. Like during COVID, there was a lot of state enforcement, a lot of state repression, right? But yeah, I think Mehdi doesn't fully understand like Chinese restrictions in general, and I don't even fault him for it. Let's be real. Most Westerners don't get it.
Chinese government has noticed.
Yeah, they hate those.
Well, most Chinese will have access to a VPN device, and that's what I use in order to access the internet.
You wrote for CNN that the Chinese government has built the Great Firewall to monitor and control their citizens' pursuit of truth. Does China control what you say now?
China does not control what I say because, again, I'm not talking to Chinese people. I'm talking to...
Yeah, see, he's right. Professor Jiang is actually right about this. He's not wrong about this. He's literally right about this. I know it sounds like defensive or whatever, but he's absolutely right about this. China doesn't give a f***. You can even be on Chinese websites and talk about most of the shit he talks about. Like, you can literally just sit there and shit on America all day, every day. No one's going to ever, the government's never going to say anything about it. Atriok, Aiden, and Doug talked about that specific thing on their podcast. The way they described it is after hearing with a professor at a university is that a lot of those strict rules are enforced by local governments. They explained that the national government only provides a framework on what terms should be on apps and all that, but the local governments get to dictate how they hand out punishments on that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens that is left to the localities, and then because we still look at China as this like fascinating, totally closed circuit country when it's not. Very accessible. We just decide, like even the social credit stuff is literally not a national policy at all. It was never a national policy. It was attempted. It was really a pilot program somewhere, and they never even implemented it. But like people talk about it still to this day. Anyway,
Westerners.
Hold on, that's what most people would say is China's great benefit. They might see, your critics might say, they're using you as a propagandist to come and say this stuff about Iran and the US on behalf of China. That would be what your critics would say.
Look, the reality is that this is a fair and legitimate criticism that I've been contemplating for the past 3-4 weeks. Because, when I first started this YouTube channel like 2 years ago, I was expecting 5,000 viewers who would have a passion for learning, who would be as engaged with literature and geopolitics as I was. And over the past month, I've blown up all across the internet. And I don't think this is organic. But so I wonder if there are some governments or some entities that believe that my message should be amplified. It is possible I'm a useful idiot. And I suspect that there are many entities around the world who would like to amplify my message, including the Chinese government, but also including the Russian government, including some aspects of the American government, including some people who are hostile towards war.
I appreciate your candor. You said you blew up on the internet. You did go viral over your Iran predictions. But on your YouTube page, as people now start to acquaint themselves with you and familiarize with your work, people have been slightly surprised to see some of your other stuff. You have a series of lectures focused on secret societies where you argue that groups like the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Jesuits...
Okay, this part is, this is my gripe with Professor Jiang. Not my Professor Jiang.
...are at the center of world control. People would say you sound kind of crazy when you talk about the Illuminati. It's the kind of thing you hear in Dan Brown novels.
Right. So I'm trying a new approach to pedagogy and to scholarship, which is speculative analysis. So I went to Yale and I received a very rigorous classical education. I'm very happy and proud that I went to Yale. But what I discovered in life, as I stumbled through life, is that what I was taught at Yale doesn't really apply to real life. People with the most rational, logical arguments don't usually win. And people who are the most progressive, the most enlightened aren't usually the ones in power. So I was determined, just for my own personal benefit, to develop a new system which would give me better insight into how power works in the world. And so I started something called predictive history. And the very idea of predictive history is this. How do we know?
Dude, he's literally saying, I went out in the real world and people are crazy. So I just thought I'll be crazy myself. That's awesome. Oh, God. How can you not love this guy, man? He leans into some heinous conspiracy theories, okay? But he does it in such a, I don't know how to explain it, like non-threatening manner. like look at his response. Mehdi Hassan was like, you tie everything back to insane conspiracy theories. What do you have to say to that? And he's like, yeah, a lot of people are crazy. I got my classical education and I realized there's just a lot of people out there who's just nutty with it, so I'll be nutty myself. Yeah, he is very nonchalant, very unassuming, and also very endearing. And the thing that we're talking about is literally like Holocaust revisionism, right? Like it's insane stuff.
If our understanding of history is correct, And the answer is, well, we can make predictions based on our historical framework, and seeing if these predictions work out or not, validate our historical models. So what I've discovered is that if you have a combination of game theory, historical patterning, and eschatology, then this gives you a pretty deep insight into how the world will turn out. And secret societies are very much an important aspect of eschatology.
I'll come back to secret societies. A couple of things you mentioned there. You said you were at Yale. Just to be clear, your degree was in English literature, was it not at Yale? It wasn't.
Yes.
International relations or national security. You're an English lit graduate, and you're not a professor. I know it's your YouTube moniker, but you're a high school teacher. You're not actually a professor. Right.
So when I went to Yale, I was actually a math and physics major. I was declared a math and physics major, but the Yale English department was very strong, and so I switched majors. So I have actually both a math background as well as an English background. That's why my system of analysis can seem strange to people, because I'm combining a multidisciplinary approach to my thinking.
Yeah. That's my goat. That's my goat. He's so awesome.
And I'm not a professor. I'm not a professor. But I never said I was a professor. It's the internet who called me professor.
Hold on. You don't call yourself Professor Jiang on your YouTube channel.
I do now, but when I first started out, if you go way back to my early lectures...
It doesn't matter when you first started out. You do call yourself Professor Jiang and you're not a professor.
Look, there's a guy on the internet who calls himself the God. Have you interviewed him yet? And asked him why he calls himself the God?
I think I'm good friends with a radio host called Charlemagne the God, but no one actually thinks he's a God. People actually think you're a professor. Just sticking with your analysis, you just said speculative analysis. To many people, that sounds like you're just making it up. You're speculating.
Look, I think that the problem with education is that it focuses too much on facts, too much on rigor, and not enough on imagination.
Too much on facts. Do you hear yourself? It sounds... I mean, what do you mean too much on facts?
Look, I know this sounds strange.
Shut up, Matty. What do you mean? He's cooking. He's like, yeah, facts are secondary sometimes. No, Jiang is being obtuse here. Jiang is just lying about being a professor. Also, right there, too much on facts. Okay, y'all are haters, bro. He won me back over. God, he is my Professor Jiang. He is my professor. I'm obviously Dr. Jihad, as you guys know, and he's Professor Jiang.
But there is a difference between facts and truth.
Now I understand why that chatter said, can we stop watching now right before this part? Oh, there were some Professor Jiang defenders in the chat that were like, don't see the rest of this interview, I think. It's good. It's good to end it right here.
Truth, right? Facts are what can be independently verified by other sources. Truth is a deep understanding of the world that allows you to understand why things are the way they are, as well as make certain predictions. We used to be a people, a human species that was very focused on truth seeking. And that's why religion was such an important part of our lives, because God, prayer was very important to help us understand our place in the world, where we came from, what we're doing here, and where we're going. And now we just focus on facts, on making sure that you can memorize all the elements of the periodic table, on making sure that
when you talk about secret societies, I guess people want to say, well, where's the factual evidence? Where's the evidence? You said, I think, the Jesuits control the Vatican. First of all, there's nothing wrong with Jesuits. Good people. I know many of them. Second of all, there's only ever been one pope who's a Jesuit, and he's gone. So people would wonder, like, facts are important to your evidence. And people would say that it's not just fun and games when you're doing speculation on YouTube. They look at some of your rhetoric and they see that you don't just criticize Zionism or Israel, as many people legitimately do. You talk about this pretty far-right concept of Pax Judaica, a new world order centered around Israel. You have a video called Dawn of the Jews.
I think one of the craziest things he's done, and there's a lot, right? Like the Holocaust revisionism, all that stuff is like very dangerous and cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Pax Judaica is another one of those things. But one of the funniest things he said, and there's many of them, was when he said that the next era of great powers are going to be Israel. And what was it? Like, it was all these countries that are going to rise from the ashes of being dominated. I think it was like Japan, Israel, and was it Iran? No, I don't even think it was Iran. Yeah, Israel, Germany, and Japan. Those are going to be like the three major powers in the world. Oh, it's funny. Pax Islamica was great too when he said Iran is going to unite the world of Islam. I'm still waiting for that, but you know.
In which you seek to answer the question, why is it that Jews are so dominant? Surely you understand why a lot of people think at best you're trafficking in pretty anti-Semitic tropes, and at worst, you're a card-carrying anti-Semite when they see that stuff.
Okay, well, that is a very strong accusation. So can you please tell me what?
He worked for Christian Science Monitor? Shut the f up. Really? Dude, this is the most fascinating guy of all time. Christian Science Monitor? What the hell? I mean, Christian Science Monitor actually does great coverage. Like, it is a well-respected institution. If it's the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's not like you might hear the word Christian Science and think like it's bullshit. It's not. It's like an actual legitimate operation. Bro is just curious what is going on. He was a researcher at the Global Education and Innovation Initiative at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, fellow of the Royal Science of Arts, Nostradamus of China. Others criticized predictions for relying on selective historical analogies, speculative game theory reasoning, and untestable assumptions. India Today said India Today, haters, said that his geopolitical analysis glaringly do not feature Chinese foreign policy or internal problems with China, even though he resides in the country. Under his career section towards the end, he has appeared in the New York Times, Chinese edition, China Youth Daily, Wall Street Journal, the Chronicle of Higher Education. In 2003, he was allowed by Chinese officials to return to China, where he decided to abandon freelance journalism and pursue public education instead. If anything, it seems like he was an undercover spy against China. After graduation, he fell into a deep frustration. He failed to publish his own book or get articles published in magazines. I felt lost, angry, bewildered by the world. I jumped from one job to another, never settled down, and eventually fell into severe depression when I was almost 30. While suffering from depression, which continued for the next 5 years, in 2000, Jiang moved to Beijing, where he worked small stints as a freelance journalist. Jiang wrote for publications such as the American Christian Science Monitor and a Hong Kong-based Far Eastern Economic Review. In 2002, Jiang initiated educational reforms at Shenzhen Middle School. In 2001, Jiang was contracted to conduct an undercover U.S.-funded PBS documentary about the labor movement in China. While filming one such protest in King, Jiang was arrested and detained for 2 days before he was deported from China on the 5th of June. In 2002, a friend claimed that he was accused of making illegal video recordings and suspected of spying. No charges were filed.
Specifically, I've said that you find offensive.
When you do a video called Dawn of the Jews, why is it that Jews are so dominant? You don't find that offensive?
I never said Jews were dominant. What I said in my lecture was that the Jewish identity was created by the Persian Empire in order to better control the Levant. And if you read the
Bro, he's like, no, you don't understand. I'm not anti-Semitic in the way that you think I am. I'm just crazy. See, this is why. How can you not like the guy? This is what I mean, man. I bet you Mehdi has not heard that one before. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of those things where you're like, I don't know how to respond to this right now.
Bible, that's exactly what you can derive from it. If you go to my lecture, Dawn of the Jews, you will see that I use the Bible.
Yeah, he said communism was started by Wall Street. Yeah. He's one of those like Rothschild guys. He has a lot of fascist conspiracy theories locked in the chamber, for the record, just so you guys understand. Like, he has a lot of the classic takes, like the Rothschilds were responsible for the communists, the great like annihilator of whites, white Christians. It was the Jews that basically funded the communist movement, all that stuff. Like he leans in that old school classic fascist conspiracy theories as well
as my primary source, and then I analyze what the Bible is saying. The problem is that most people don't read the Bible.
But people who came up with Pax Judaica are not biblical scholars. They're the modern white supremacist far right.
Sorry. What is wrong with the term Pax Judaica?
You tell me. What does it mean?
It just means that there is an entity in the Middle East, Israel, that is able to dominate the Middle East, very much along the lines of Pax Americana and Pax Britannica and Pax
But you didn't say
Magalica.
Pax Israelica. You said Pax Judaica. That implies all Jews. You know the tropes about Jews running the world. I wouldn't be okay if you said Iran is dominant, Saudi Arabia is dominant, Pax Muslimica. In fact, you know.
He has said that. You're wrong. He has said that. He said Pax Islamica. Yo, Mehdi, you're not a ball knower. That's what I'm saying, dude. No, you're wrong. He has actually said Pax Islamica. He said Iran. Hasanabi, he's an academic. Of course, he's well versed in the literature.
Know that there are many racists in the West who do believe that Islam and Muslims are trying to take over the world. I find that equally offensive.
Right. So I'm using a Latin convention. And so the Latin convention would be Pax Judaica. It would not be Pax Israelica. I mean, like.
But you know where this concept comes from. It exists in far-right online circles. It's not some academic term.
Do you believe that the Greater Israel Project is a far-right conspiracy theory?
No.
What is it then?
I think it's a very real project being carried out by the Israeli government. I just don't call it Pax Judaica.
Right, okay. So the difference between the Greater Israel Project and Pax Judaica is this. Greater Israel Project is what the Israelis believe that Yahweh, their God, promised to their ancestor Abraham in the Bible. And this extends from the now...
He's unflappable is right. He just doesn't, he's always like this. He's like, no.
To the Euphrates. And I could have just used Greater Israel Project, but I want to differentiate because I believe that Pax Judaica is not an empire run by Jews, for Jews, by Jews. It is an empire run by transnational capital and secret societies in order to create an AI surveillance state throughout the Middle East.
And this is, just to be clear.
This is what I mean. Bro, every interview with this guy seems like a bit. Every interview with this guy is like the first 12 minutes are like, wow, okay, this guy's really cooking. And then like he slams shit into the last 4 minutes where you're like, what the what are you saying right now? Where did you pull this from? How did you do this? This is exactly what happened with the Breaking Points interview. This is exactly what happened with the Breaking Points interview. Where like the first like 15 minutes is so good and so sound. Like the analysis is sound. The questions weren't as like contentious as Mehdi is presenting. And he's just explaining like his thought process, how he believes what has taken place so far. And then in the last like 4 or 5 minutes in the Breaking Points interview, he just starts being like, yeah, it's the Frankists and it's the Illuminati and all this other shit where you're like, what the, wait, what? It's awesome.
This is speculative analysis. This is not based on facts, as you say.
So it is based on speculative analysis, based on history, historical patterns. It's also based on connecting the dots. Because if you just look at what Netanyahu says, if you actually just go and watch on YouTube...
No, I know what Netanyahu says. We're in agreement on how bad Netanyahu is, how expansionist is. I'm talking about the language you use, the milieu you're in. Let me ask you this before we wrap up. What are your own politics? Where do you place yourself on the political spectrum?
I believe I've always been on the left. So I believe that wealth redistribution is very important. I believe in freedom of speech. I am anti-war. I'm anti-empire. I believe in...
Bro, that's my GOAT. That's my GOAT. He brought me back in. He brought me back in. He brought me back in. Okay? He brought me back in. It's awesome. It's also very obvious that he did not get like a traditional Chinese education. Okay? Because like half the shit he says, like all of the crazy conspiracy stuff would be instantly solved if he actually got a Chinese education or like went to a Chinese university and like, I don't know, got an education in like Marxist Leninist interpretations. High ranking officials in the Communist Party of China have a degree in. Like, it's just, you drop a little bit of dialectical materialism into all this or historical materialism, all the conspiracy stuff goes away. And it is a fully fleshed out worldview. He is somehow identifies some of these things, but ties it back with like maximum liberalism because of his Yale education.
Individual autonomy. And so unfortunately, I used to be left, but I think that like given my preferences and given my politics, I believe most people would consider me on the far right nowadays. And that's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Last question. You made 3 very famous predictions in 2024. What is your big prediction now for 2026? We'll see what happens. We can test it out at the end of the year.
Well, I've made 3 predictions about how this war will progress. Okay. So my first prediction is that the United States will use ground troops.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm with you.
And I believe that this ground troops will be a quagmire.
Don't try to steal his prediction, Mehdi. You see that? I'm with you. Okay. That's Professor Jiang's predictive history. That's not your take. Stop the steal. Many in the chat are saying, bro, I made this prediction too. Okay, doesn't matter. It was his. His political affiliation is chaotic neutral is true. Bro, unironically used horseshoe theory for his own politics. He's just racist. I mean, he's everything. He's everything all at once.
for the United States, and that they will have
Agreed.
to call a national draft. Okay, that's my first prediction.
Okay.
My second prediction, and this is very important, is that Israel and the United States will not use a nuclear weapon in this war. I think.
I didn't realize that Jiang still teaches in China. Yeah, he. Someone was saying, I don't know if this is true or not, but like, it sounds so unbelievable. Someone was saying that all of the lectures, like fake lectures that he does, is how he teaches Chinese students English. And I don't believe that to be the case, because that's insane. Imagine learning English in high school in China through Professor Jiang's lectures about Pax Judaica. Oh no. It's the most insane way to learn English. Oh, Jesus Christ. What do you mean by fake lectures? These students do a Q&A every lecture, but yes, he's insane. No, I meant like, given that he bills himself as Professor Jiang, someone else gave him that moniker, but whatever, he's going with it. And what he talks about, you would assume that he is lecturing people on politics, right? You wouldn't just assume that he's lecturing people on the English language and how to speak it. That's why I'm saying fake lectures. Like, they're not real, college level history lectures or anything. Like, he's not teaching international relations. But in my mind, in my headcanon, I love the notion that he's an English and philosophy teacher at a private Chinese high school. They might be right. No, I'm just, in my headcanon, I hope that he's actually teaching his students English in those videos that we watch. Like, that's his method of teaching his students English. That's unbelievable. It's incredible. I need more of that.
That the talk of nuclear weapons is fear-mongering. I don't think we will escalate to that point of nuclear weapons.
I hope you're right. I worry about nukes. I hope you're right.
And my third and most controversial prediction is that I believe that during the course of this war, somehow, some way, the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a disaster.
See, he's scared. Mehdi is scared. Look, that's how you know he believes it. That's how you know you believe Professor Jiang. You believe him. Look how scared Mehdi got. He said the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be destroyed somehow. Which, again, like, how is that a prediction if you don't? That's just kind of you making stuff up, right? Like, if you don't have any clear assessment on how that happens, right? Game theory? No, that's not how that works. Jiang is gonna blow it up. That's a parlay? True. To be fair, it could be anybody. Nobody. No, brother. I think there's only one country that would do that. Okay. Couldn't be anybody at all. There's only one place, one country, one movement that would be invested in doing it, and they've been trying to do it. He must be banned in Poly Market. Yeah. I'm not going to say which country. It's Israel.
Forbid. We will have to leave it there on that rather dark prediction. Shui-Chin Jiang, I appreciate you taking time out. I appreciate you taking my questions. Thank you so much.
People watched it and they said, exclusive, who is Professor Jiang? Who does he work for? What is this? Having spent a short period living in Guangdong during his childhood, Jiang did not speak Mandarin his early life, only after enrolling at Yale. In 1997, during Jimin's visit to the U.S., he signed a Sino-U.S. Rule of Law Initiative. Following year, Yale Law School, China Law Center. What is this? Mehdi was so mean to him. I agree. I will defend Professor Jiang. Someone needs to check Professor's Kalshi account. I know a gambler when I see it. No, he would never. That's unethical, bro. Coincidentally, following his trail, Professor training at Yale, Professor Jiang returned to China for the first time in 1998, working briefly as an intern teacher. Following a short internship. Oh, this is so much, bro. This is too much. It's too much reading. I don't care enough. I want to keep I want to keep the mystery alive. I want to keep the mystery alive. I don't want to know that he's a Fed or whatever the. No one on Twitter that writes a long and convoluted effort post like this is going to end up telling me that this person is not a Fed. Okay. Anytime somebody writes this much on Twitter, I know at the tail end of that, it's going to be the guy's a Fed. You feel me?